together again, you know. So in the 80s, it really started up again. I came in '85, and then we got Billy in, and it's grown and grown. And so
It sure has.
there's a lot of history right here.
A lot of groaning also.
It was fun.
Interrupted there. The introduction's there.
I'm James Hawkins, James Roy Hawkins. I turned 78 2 days ago, and in the club I am.
Little Jimmy.
Yeah, little Jimmy Griggs, that's it.
Do I have to do everything?
Yeah, you do. Okay, Karen, you're up.
You got a new name.
Yeah. I'm Karen Harris. I've been coming here for 3 or 4 years now. I don't have an official canonical name yet. It was
Yeah, now we're talking.
Well, it was supposed to happen right before COVID, and then things got so.
But if we don't write it down, it will never happen.
I'm David Fields. I've been coming 3 or 4 years, somewhere in there, and my canonical name is Tobias Gregson.
Good.
I'm J. Lou. My name is Solitary Cyclist.
Oh. How long have you been coming?
5, 6 years.
Yeah.
You're a big wheel.
I thought
Oh
it was
my
longer.
gosh.
Drew Thomas, I am known as a conductor of light. And I live at, you can find me easily because I'm near exit 221B off of Route 40.
Nice.
Wow.
We have 2 members that can get off and go to their house
That's
at
true,
221B. So
3. You 2, right?
I can do 2. We all need to move to
Actually,
221.
us too.
You too? Well, everybody lives. We're all moving 221B.
Yeah.
It's a colony out there.
That's Old Hickory, actually, yeah.
Tom, go ahead.
Tom Filler, I've been coming here to the club about 25 years now, and my canonical name is Hilton Cubits.
I'm Elsa Cute.
My wife and I.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great, Patsy.
Okay, I'm Patricia Williams, and my canonical name I think is Miss Hud.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And I've been coming an awful long time, maybe 19 or 20 years now.
Wow.
Something like that.
I'm Reese Moorhead, and my canonical name is Lomax the Sub-Librarian, which is doubly appropriate.
Oh, good.
Since I'm a retired librarian with Metro Public Libraries, and I was in the Navy, although they told me my hearing was so bad I didn't qualify for substitute. And I've been coming, I don't know, maybe 20 years.
Very good.
My name is Alvin Shockley, and I came from 85 to 87, I think 4 or 5 times. But then life and family, whatever, got in the way of Sherlock Holmes, but now I'm back. I was here in May, and now I'm back again. I live in Owensboro, but I got a son that lives, he's a lawyer here in town, so we come to visit, so I'm trying to make it here more often.
What's your son's name?
All right.
James Shockley.
I think he's suing me.
No. No, it wouldn't be him, yeah.
Now, I've got an attorney named Shockley suing me. It may not be him, but it's your cousin.
Then maybe. But no, my canonical name for the Louisville group was Dr. Werner from, that's the Norwich builder, and that's what I was wanting it to be way back 35 years ago, but I don't guess it ever got done.
Well, I know the guy. I know a guy.
Are you the Dr. Berner from Kentucky?
That's his canonical name.
That was my canonical name.
Oh, so you're not from Kentucky.
I am from Kentucky.
We used to have a Dr. Berner. Are you him?
I came, that was my canonical name in the 80s.
Yeah.
The last time I came was
look
at
different. You put on some weight.
Lost hair, yeah. The last time I came was at your house in the spring of '87.
Oh, you are the Dr. Berner.
That was me.
I knew we'd get there. I knew we'd get back to it. But
Yeah, you said you didn't have a memory anymore. Your
Oh,
memory
I got
memory.
memory stories of that kind.
Oh, okay.
I'm Kathy Peck. I've been coming about 5 years. My canonical name is Irene Adler.
All right.
Oh.
You're the one.
I'm her husband, Ryan, and my canonical name, I have to read this, is Wilhelm Gottfried Sigmund von Ornstein.
Trippingly off the tongue.
And I'm Billy Fields, Horace Harker, from one of the stories, Napoleon. Thank you all for being here. I thought we ought to remember our history occasionally, and it's good to do that. So after we do that, we have to go straight into show and tell.
Yes,
So show and tell. What you got to show? What you got to tell?
I don't have a show, but I will tell you, the week prior to meeting next month, I'm going to Cape May, New Jersey, which is having a Sherlock Holmes weekend.
Oh, wow.
that was fun.
So you'll be able to report to us?
I will report, in Cape May, not here, I will be in Victorian Garden.
Will you take pictures so we can ridicule? I mean,
Yes.
celebrate with you?
Yes.
I had to say that.
Mocking is
Is
allowed.
that sponsored
Mocking
by a
is
group
legal.
up there, Sherlock group?
I think it's sponsored by the local theater. It's doing a Sherlock Holmes play that same weekend.
Oh, okay.
Oh, nice.
Cape May is a big tourism town, so they do. Look it up. Come up there.
We'll be expect that, and then speaking for the editors of our newsletter, they're going to expect a report.
Right.
No,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Send us something.
Okay. What else to tell or show?
I'll show. A few weeks ago, my wonderful two doctors told me that it's time for me to start using a cane. Now, I've been falling a lot. So my daughter got on the internet and found this one. It is a replica of the cane that Watson used in one of the movies with Robert Downey Jr. So
Can you hold it up high?
oh yeah, if I'm gonna have to use one, at least it's interesting.
You got a sword in it?
Yeah, you can get it with the sword.
Yeah.
Because I would end up being the one hurt.
I guess you got
on your own
points.
sword.
Oh, yes, I would have a point, yeah.
Touche.
Uh-oh.
What's on the top of it?
Dum-dum
Is
It
that
is
a
a lion.
lion?
Don't look right down the barrel, it might go off.
Oh, God.
Yeah, did you ever
Others-
see the movie, The Hound of the Baskervilles with Ian Richardson?
Yes.
Yeah.
There was a cane in that had a gun built into it.
Well, that's one I'll
Well,
do.
Yeah, that's what you need, bang.
If Bill Baker were still here, he would probably show up with it like
Oh,
he did in the
absolutely.
park
Maybe
that
he
time.
loaded too.
Oh, it's a long story. You had to be there for that event when he shows up. This is an official air gun that they would have used in 810. I'm gonna put it down below the picnic table, please. We're in a public area. And Bill had, what do you mean?
Weapons prohibited, yes.
What do you mean? But Bill would always bring,
Yeah.
talk about the history. Bill would be the one who would, every meeting, he would try to find something that would be appropriate to share. He worked at the Tennessee State Museum, and his specialty, he managed the military branch, but he was a big supporter there. So he might bring a blue carbuncle, or he might bring a gun, or
A baronet?
Yeah,
He brought that one time.
Yeah, he brought in some kind of silver something one time that was out of the Kellogg family collection, the real Kellogg family. It wasn't a box of cereal. And we were passing around, so we'll be real careful. Of course, the cork came out of some kind of a flask cork came out of the top. We were all on the ground
And
trying
this
to find
genie
cork.
arose.
So you never can tell with him. Other show and tell.
I have a couple of things.
All right.
This Best Mystery Stories of the Year, edited by Lee Child, edited by Otto Penzler in New York, whom we know well from our visits to New York. One of the stories in here is by David Markham, who is one of our members. He didn't come much. It's 4 or 5 hours over here from Marysville, so he doesn't come. But his story is The Adventure of the House Office Baby. So he was real proud of that being selected.
It's a pastiche.
Yeah. He has raised, with the help of other authors, $100,000 for the Stepping Stone School in Surrey, where Undershaw, Conan Doyle's home, turned it into a school. So, he does good work there. The other book I have is the manuscript of The Empty House. It's Conan Doyle's manuscript. Phil Burgum is the guy who has put all the notes in over here. Phil is a Norwegian explorer, and he's just recently become the editor of the Sherlock Holmes Collections newsletter, which I get, and it's really interesting. But this is where a lot of the material we got today came from. They have a manuscript series, maybe 6 or 8 books that Ira Matansky and some of these people, they're brilliant on working with this kind of stuff. So that's a great book. Yep, that's it.
What's always interesting when you look at the manuscript is, I don't know how he did it, but you look at Doyle's handwritten manuscripts and there are no changes much. I mean,
No.
you know, occasionally, but it's, you know, you wonder if it was his second or third time around, and then you read about it, and what do they say, Bill?
That he just rarely, he had it in his mind before he put it down, and rarely made changes in it.
He just did, which is phenomenal.
He carried a school paperback around with him. It's in here, if I can find it right quick. Yeah, Paragon. It's just like something a kid would take to school, and he wrote his notes down in these. And I think this one took 3 of these books, you know, but it's amazing stuff.
You remember from elementary school, though, well, some of the older members, we all had our little writing tablets like that.
Absolutely.
And my favorite was Big Chief.
Yeah.
Which was a red cover, had an
Yeah.
Indian chief on the front. And you can't use them anymore, I'm certain. But anyway, but I didn't know he did. That's good. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Did you remember that?
Dean?
Well, it's just a general note. I don't have any detail about it, but there is a second Enola Holmes film in production. It may be complete and in post-production at this point.
Yeah. Did we all generally like that?
I did.
I did.
Oh, good. I did too.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be the only one to
Yeah.
be ridiculed.
Yeah.
Hate to be
It's a
ridiculed.
little strange seeing Superman as Sherlock, but.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
bulked up Sherlock
Yeah.
I can recall.
Still available on Netflix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
The,
Oh,
sorry.
competition,
related to
go ahead.
this, Nancy Springer, the author of the Enola Holmes books, allowed one of my former students to interview her. And that interview is posted on Junior Sherlockian.com.
I would like to announce that I got a birthday email from Bonnie McBird, who lives in London and writes some of these really great stories, you know.
Yep.
In fact, Dean and I are going to write a review. I didn't tell you. Our next newsletter. It's a Christmas story. It's really good. I'll bring it to your house.
You're going to let him come to your house?
No,
He didn't let me in the door.
Oh, just
on the outside.
I have to leave it on the front porch and drive away.
Ring the bell and run.
Yeah.
We understand though. It
Yeah, I
works.
get it. I get it. Jeff?
Yes.
Your turn.
Just a heads up notice, in December, Lakewood Theater, up in Lakewood, Tennessee, is doing a Sherlock Holmes. Can't remember which play they're doing, but it's, maybe Blue Carbuncle being Christmas, but.
Tell us about it later on so we
I'll
don't
try to
forget.
keep in mind.
You will gather that information.
Yeah.
Where is Lakeworth?
Actually,
Lakewood.
Lakewood.
no, it's actually,
okay.
it's a neighborhood in Nashville.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
So
Up
it's,
by
it's inside the city
It's a
limits, so.
suburb.
It's
really easy to
over.
get. It's off of Old Hickory.
Yeah, you know where Old Hickory
yeah.
Boulevard is, goes through Hermitage?
Yes.
If you take Hermitage back toward town, you run right through Lakewood.
Oh.
Used to be its own city, and they surrendered their certificate of
remember
heritage.
that.
Oh, is that our Lakewood,
Yeah.
Yes,
oil
close
by
by.
Old Hickory?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You get there by
I-
221B. It's easy.
I go by there almost every day.
There you go.
It's not a city anymore though. So
No.
No.
This is
not-
in December, you
Not
said.
municipal.
Yes, December. And they do have a
The
website.
Gangs of Foot.
They joined
The
National.
Gangs
Gangs
of
of
Foot,
Foot?
that's the one
Huh.
they're doing.
Other items, ideas?
Free books.
Free books?
Whoa.
Yeah.
Please take them.
Have you ever considered a Sherlock Holmes coloring book?
Oh,
As you're setting, look, I mean, get your.
Billy, there are actually 4 of those with different covers.
Uh-huh.
Really?
I've got
Well, if you have crayons or color pencils,
Look on
you
the
are
back.
prepared.
Look on the back.
Would you mark on it?
What is the guy sitting in the window? What does that connect to today?
Empty house.
Anybody see it?
Yeah.
Empty house.
Connection.
Yep.
Empty house.
Yep.
I held this up for that
That's a really
purpose.
cool
There you
book.
go.
I've got a second.
Is that one of the Sherlock stories?
That someone gave me the coloring books to use in my classroom, but since I have to stay blood, guts, and weaponry free, I can't use them.
I guess. Probably very inappropriate nowadays.
Let's not talk about.
We will not go down that road. Is there any other show town?
We
Oh.
might point out that this is the first time that this club has ever met when Queen Elizabeth was not the Queen of England.
Yeah. You know, it is.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's true.
We probably should have started the day with a moment of silence. I actually thought about yesterday. I thought about bringing some liquor so we could toast. And
Yeah.
then I thought about y'all drinking my liquor, and I said, nah. Was that wrong? I should have said that out loud. But it has been interesting to watch. Any reflections, any thoughts on the last week or so? Yes, sir.
There was a writer named Cordwainer Smith who died in 1965, between 1948 and 65, when he was publishing a lot of stuff. He wrote a series of stories about a planet in the galaxy called Norstralia, which is what the natives call it, and everyone else called it Old North Australia because it was settled by people who grew up in Australia. And the one planet in the entire galaxy which had an immortality drug which made them super ultra hyper rich. It was like the poorest farmer on the planet was a billionaire. And because their ancestors came from Australia, they considered themselves loyal subjects of Queen Elizabeth II, even though the stories take place 15,000 years in the future. They're still waiting for the Queen to show up.
Well, based on listening to the British folks this week, they expect her to be here for 15,000 years. So
Yes.
We will have much pageant. We've had much pageantry. There will be more pageantry, and then we see what Charles III does. I thought it interesting that he kept. I mean, you know, I know it's been his name, but based on the history of the Charles and the Brit, and I thought, well, the last one didn't do so good, but
No, the last one had a great
it was the first one. You're right, first one. He really didn't do well, and we, you know, of course, there's a canonical connection to Charles I.
Yeah, Musgrave ritual.
In fact, I actually had to send a note to David Hayes this week about that, and
Yeah.
he said, I may need to write a paper.
Yeah.
So here it goes. Reese.
Footnote, I grew up in Cookeville, and the president of Tennessee Tech, back in the time when I was growing up, had been a Rhodes Scholar and married an English girl who came to Cookeville with him. And she was so dignified that when I was growing up, I thought she was the Queen of England. The one they were calling the Queen of England was stand-in.
Wow.
Well, other thoughts?
That's a librarian for you, right? They're weird.
Well, Mr. Hawkins?
Okay, we're going to begin with a quiz. And if you watch the screen, you don't need to write anything down. There's no paper. We can just discuss it. What happens is we will see what I came up with as the empty house. It's sort of a Halloween theme.
Ready?
Let me introduce it just a little bit more. So, what happens in this video is a light is shining, and it comes to a question, and it'll pop up. And I've asked Jeff to pause it there. If you can't really read it, I've got it here. But try to read the thing, and then what happens is you get an illustration, Frederick Doris Steele from the Collier's magazine, and then you get the answer to what the question was. So there's no anything to write down, but just try to stay with it. Here we go. Years after Holmes died at the Rockenbach, supposedly. Can you read that? Here it is. Holmes makes himself known to Dr. Watson after coming to his office in disguise. What he was disguised as? Escott the plumber, Segerson the Norwegian explorer, the aged bookseller, the groom dissipated by drink.
I know.
Okay, and we're gonna go forward. Can you see that? That's Holmes walking on the street. There's the answer. Can you read it?
No.
When Sherlock Holmes finally reveals himself, which of these things happened? 1. He used Baritsu, a British form of Japanese wrestling. He used a secreted derringer that he pulled out at the proper moment. He used a sword cane, say for this perfect moment. There you go, David.
You have different
He
questions.
used jujitsu.
Yeah, it's different on the screen.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to read what I got here. He used reason to convince Moriarty to give up his evil ways. What do you think it is?
Let's see.
Watson
Fable.
No, not good love.
Yeah, those are fun to this question.
Go ahead and give the answer to that question.
Okay, here we go. We're going to see the answer now. Sorry, baby. Okay. Oh, is that not the right?
What's that?
Sorry about that. I got them out of. Holmes explains to Watson. Oh, this is the one I just read. How he survived at Reichenbach Falls. How did he overcome Moriarty? Do you remember?
Remember your the
Baritsu? Baritsu, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry about that. I got out of it.
Remember your average.
There he is.
Might apply some Baritsu to you.
There you go. Now we're back on track.
Okay.
Who is the one person Sherlock Holmes confided in after he faked his death at Reichenbach? Anybody?
Mycroft. His brother, Mycroft.
Go ahead. If they answer, just roll.
Yay.
Yeah, it is. Don't you like it? Holmes went into hiding to catch the remaining members of Professor Moriarty's criminal organization. Who was he attempting to catch in this story?
Colonel Moran.
Roll it. Yeah, thank you. And there he is. About to get hit in the head with a
Sebastian.
Moran.
Yeah. Yes.
That's another Moran there. Here's the next question. The murderer used cutting-edge technology for 1900 to commit the murder. What did he use?
Air gun.
Air gun that fired revolver bullets.
Right, exactly. Here it comes. It's called dum-dums. There you go. Dum-dum bullets. This is on the website too, guys. Why was the Honorable Ronald Adair murdered? Anybody know?
He lost a card game or something?
Yeah.
Well, they won a card game.
Moran
Moran
was
was
cheating.
He won.
cheating.
Yeah, he cheated.
Moran
There you
was
go.
cheating.
Roll it. Exactly. He threatened to expose Moran. This is a card cheat. Sherlock Holmes travels the world and meets many interesting people while he's dead. Arthur Conan Doyle rather egregiously misspells one of their titles or names. Who is it?
Dalai Lama.
Roll it. Good.
Hello.
Hello. The head.
Yama.
Yama? Sherlock Holmes draws his murderer into the open by use of a decoy. What or whom is the decoy?
Wax bust.
Yeah, roll it. Good. A wax bust, yeah. And you'll see it in the window. There it is.
Wax bust.
I was going to say a wax butt, but I went
I'm
with
just
the bust.
surprised some of y'all didn't make an off-color comment about how busts can be used for attractiveness.
And mellowed Holmes seems happy to see Inspector Lestrade, and even congratulates him for his handling of what case? Do you remember? Morgan the Poisoner, Mosley Mystery, Park Lane Mystery, Hosmer Angel Identification.
I think it's Park Lane.
Park Lane.
That isn't. Here it comes. Mosley Mystery. Yeah. Whoa. Hey, there's our pen, guys.
Oh.
That's funny how, I never know how this is going to lay out because I don't have control over all this. I just put the pictures in and the software displays it, so.
What
there you go.
program is that?
It's called Animoto. You go to animoto.com. I
Yeah.
think I pay them maybe $80 or $90 a year to do as many as I want to.
Yeah, wow.
So it's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and now we will
Part
get
two.
into the story. And if you readers would please take your place, we're going to have a readers' theater today. So make yourself comfortable, get where you can see. By the way, there is a 1 o'clock Zoom talk by my friend Ray Betzner. He is delivering the BSI Trust lecture today at 1 o'clock. So we're going to try to make some of that.
Can I read from back here, Jim?
That's fine, sure.
No, you can't.
No.
You
Not if you're
Get
on
up
the
here.
camera.
We're going to video.
Y'all are gonna make fun of the way I talk.
Yeah, we are.
Video.
Thanks sound like you think you have
That's what I think.
We're not zooming, but we are going to put a video on the website. So I'm trying to video this and see if we can make it work. Right? Are we good?
No. John Jay never sued me.
He did. And they called and told me he was going to withdraw.
If I sit down, I'll be out of the way. You're going to put it somewhere else?
Exactly.
Okay, in this presentation we have a presenter. We have Holmes read by different people. I didn't want one person because there's a lot of Holmes reading. It's right out of the stories. And then we have other characters. And Billy is Fields, of course. Watson. And Karen is odd jobs, whatever it is. I didn't mean to
That's like a James Bond thing, isn't it?
Yes, really.
We're now James Bond Society. I love it.
Okay, here we go. Video. We'll just back just a little. We're going to move it back further. No, you're fine. I'm just going to reposition this camera one more time. Okay, that's got it all. And so just listen up and we'll have some questions for you in just a moment. Are we ready? Go.
In the BSI Manuscript Series volume Out of the Abyss, editor Phil Burgum shares this. More has been written about the empty house in the Baker Street Journal than any other of the stories. The tale ranks among the most fertile for research, scholarly discourse, and disputation. In his newly annotated Sherlock Holmes treatise on the empty house, Leslie Klinger adds 14 pages of further discussion after the story concludes. On April 6, 1893, Conan Doyle wrote to his mother,
My dearest Mom, all is very well down here. I'm in the middle of the last Holmes story, after which the gentleman vanishes, never to reappear. I am weary of his name. After I had done 2 series, I saw that I was in danger of having my hand forced, and of being entirely identified with what I regarded as a lower stratum of literary achievement. Therefore, as a sign of my resolution, I determined to end the life of my hero. The idea was in my mind when I went with my wife for a short holiday in Switzerland, in the course of which we saw the wonderful falls of Reichenbach, a terrible place, and one that I thought would make a worthy tomb for poor Sherlock, even if I buried my banking account along with him.
So Conan Doyle did the unthinkable. He killed Sherlock Holmes. But 10 years later, he resurrected him. I say resurrected, but as we find out, he never died. Both the Strand magazine and Collier's Weekly did their best to explain what happened. This is from Collier's Weekly, September 19, 1903.
Get this. In next week's issue of Collier's, Conan Doyle is bringing Sherlock Holmes back. In next week's issues of Collier's, we'll begin the most notable series of short stories of the year, The Return of Sherlock Holmes by Sir A. Conan Doyle. Those familiar with the previous adventures of the famous detective and are there are any who are not, will remember that the last heard of Mr. Holmes was the report that he had been hurled headlong over a precipitous cliff. But Holmes did not die. He survived the deadly peril through which he passed, and of this, and of the ensuing adventure, Sir Conan Doyle tells us in a remarkable series which he has called The Return of Sherlock Holmes.
If you read the story for today, you know that the empty house is set 3 years after Holmes fell into Reichenbach, entangled with Professor Moriarty. Conan Doyle's fans were not as enthusiastic about his more serious literature as he had hoped. They wanted Holmes back, period. So, after negotiations with Strand Magazine and Collier's Weekly in America, he pledged to write more Sherlock Holmes tales. The Empty House reveals what Holmes did during this hiatus and why he returned to London and 221B Baker Street. In this passage, Watson does his best to explain what happened when Holmes disappeared, or reappeared.
Only now, at the end of nearly 10 years, am I allowed to supply those missing links which make up the whole of that remarkable chain. The crime was of interest in itself, but that interest was nothing to me compared to the inconceivable sequel, which afforded me the greatest shock and surprise of any event in my adventurous life. Even now, after this long interval, I find myself thrilling as I think of it, feeling once more that sudden flood of joy, amazement, incredulity.
Yes! I'm sorry.
We were going to have to do a voiceover, which utterly has shown some interest in those glimpses, which I have occasionally given them of the thoughts and actions of a very incredible man, that they are not to blame me if I have not shared my knowledge with them. For should I have considered it my first duty to have done so, that I had not been barred by a positive prohibition from his own lips, which was only withdrawn upon the 3rd of last month.
Here's the famous scene.
I had not been in my study 5 minutes when the maid entered to say that a person desired to see me. To my astonishment, it was none other than my strange old book collector, his sharp, wizened face peering out of the frame of white hair, and his precious volumes, a dozen of them at least, wedged under his right arm.
You're surprised to see me, sir.
I acknowledged that I was.
Well, I have a conscience, sir, and when I chanced to see you go into this house as I came hobbling after you, I thought to myself, I'll just step in and see that kind gentleman and tell him that if I was a bit gruff in my manner, there was not any harm meant, and that I am obliged to him for picking up my books.
You make too much of a trifle. May I ask how you knew who I was?
Well, sir, if it isn't too great a liberty, I'm a neighbor of yours, for you'll find my little bookshop at the corner of Church Street. I'm very happy to see you, I am sure. Maybe you collect yourself, sir. Here's British Birds and Catalysts and the Holy War, a bargain every one of them. With 5 volumes, you could just fill that gap on that second shelf. It looks untidy, does it not, sir?
I moved my head to look at the cabinet behind me. When I turned again, Sherlock Holmes was standing smiling at me across my study table. I rose to my feet, stared at him for some seconds in utter amazement, and then it appears that I must have fainted for the first and last time of my life. Certainly a gray mist swirled before my eyes. When it cleared, I found my collar ends undone and the tingling aftertaste of brandy upon my lips. Holmes was bending over my chair, his flask in hand.
My dear Watson, I owe you 1,000 apologies. I had no idea that you would be so affected.
We have a video clip. Oh, sorry about that.
Sorry.
Good morning. Yeah, we're gonna bring it up. This is from Sherlock, and it always bothered me that Watson was just like, ho hum, okay, so you've been gone for 3 years, big deal. Well, they really play it up on the Sherlock videos. We're gonna get that for you right quick.
What is there's not another MP3.
Sorry, maybe I didn't put it on.
This is why I never do anything. Never.
Okay. Well, if you remember, maybe I didn't put it in there, Watson does 2 or 3 things. First of all, he wants to choke Holmes, so he grabs him and they fall in the floor and he's choking him to death. And another time he just takes his head and head butts him, you know, and bust his nose. He was really hacked. And you remember Cumberbatch is like the wine steward. He comes to the table and blah, 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 blah. And then he looks at Watts and says, could I just ask you one thing? Are you going to keep this ridiculous mustache, you know? And he just burst out. So it's a great, great scene. I'm sorry I didn't put it in there. I meant to. Okay, presenter, we're going ahead. Thank you so much.
It's obvious that we are focusing on the story behind the story more than on the murder of Ronald Adair and how the case got solved. Reconciliation is the main event in The Empty House. After Holmes explains to Watson how he was able to defeat Moriarty, he recounts his travels across the globe, filling Watson in on all the places he had traveled.
And this is Holmes reading now. It's Shannon, of course, but go ahead.
Moriarty drew no weapon, but he rushed at me and threw his long arms around me. He knew that his own game was up and was only anxious to revenge himself upon me. We tottered together upon the brink of the fall. I have some knowledge, however, of Buritsu, or the Japanese system of wrestling, which has more than once been very useful to me. I slipped through his grip, and he, with a horrible scream, kicked madly for a few seconds and clawed the air with both of his hands. But for all of his efforts, he could not get his balance, and over he went. With my face over the brink, I saw him fall a long way. Then he struck a rock, bounded off, and splashed into the water. I traveled for 2 years in Tibet, therefore, and amused myself by visiting Lhasa and spending some days with the head Lama. You may have read of the remarkable explorations of a Norwegian named Sigerson, but I am sure that it never occurred to you that you were receiving news of your friend. I then passed through Persia, looked in at Mecca, and paid a short but interesting visit to the Khalifa at Khartoum, the results which I have communicated to the Foreign Office. Returning to France, I spent some months in a research into the coal tar derivatives which I conducted in a laboratory at Montpellier in the south of France. Having conducted this to my satisfaction and learning only one of my enemies was now left in London, I was about to return when my movements were hastened by the news of this very remarkable Park Lane mystery, which not only appealed to me by its own merits, but which seemed to offer some most peculiar personal opportunities. I came over at once to London, called in my own person at Baker Street, threw Mrs. Hudson into violent hysterics, and found that Mycroft had preserved my rooms and my papers exactly as they had always been. So it was, my dear Watson, that at 2 o'clock today I found myself in my old armchair, in my own old room, and only wishing that I could have seen my old friend Watson in the other chair, which he often adored.
Let us now summarize the story and bring in the other characters. Holmes leads Watson through a network of mews and stables, arriving at Camden House, the empty house.
Do you know where we are?
Surely that is Baker Street.
Exactly. We are in Camden House, which stands opposite to our own old quarters.
But why are we here?
Because it commands so excellent a view of that picturesque pile. Might I trouble you, my dear Watson, to draw a little nearer to the window, taking every precaution not to show yourself, and then to look up at our old rooms, the starting point of so many of our little adventures? We will see if my 3 years of absence you have entirely taken away my power to surprise you.
And at this point, we're going to have some questions we'll throw out to all of you. You're welcome to answer. What did Watson see from the window of Camden House?
The wax bust.
The wax bust of Sherlock Holmes, right.
We have the answers.
What role did Mrs. Hudson play in making it look convincing?
She cornered and turned the bust every few minutes.
Moved it several times so it threw a different shadow on the window shade. As Holmes and Watson wait in silence, what sounds are heard from the rear of the house? Remember?
Door opening. Door.
A door opens and shuts. Someone's creeping down the hall.
Oh.
What does this man do when he reaches the window, unaware that he is not alone in the room? He has something that he puts together, right? What does that mean? Air gun, right? Raises the window a bit and fires a bullet across the street at the figure of Holmes. What does Holmes do the instant the man fires a gun?
Listen as Watson tells the story.
Holmes sprang like a tiger, armed to the marksman's back, and hurled him flat upon his face. He was up again in a moment, and with convulsive strength he seized Holmes by the throat. But I struck him on the head with the butt of my revolver, and he dropped again upon the floor. I fell upon him, and as I held him, my comrade blew a shrill call upon a whistle. There was a clatter of running feet upon the pavement, and 2 policemen in uniform and 1 plain-clothes detective rushed through the front entrance into the room.
Lestrade and 2 policemen run into the room, securing the suspect.
This gentleman is Colonel Sebastian Moran, once of Her Majesty's Indian Army, and the best heavy game shot that our Eastern Empire has ever produced. I believe I am correct, Colonel, in saying that your bag of tigers still remains unrivaled.
You cunning, cunning fiend.
I wonder that my very simple stratagem could deceive so old as Shakiri. It must be very familiar to you. Have you not tethered a young kid under a tree, lain above it with your rifle and waited for the bait to bring up your tiger? This empty house is my tree, and you are my tiger. You have possibly had other guns in reserve in case there should be several tigers, or in the unlikely supposition of your own aim failing you. These are my other guns. The parallel is exact.
Back safely at 221B, Holmes fills Watson in on the sad demise of Colonel Sebastian Moran. He turns to Mrs. Hudson and commends her for her good work.
I hope you have observed all precautions, Mrs. Hudson.
Well, I went to it on my knee, sir, just as you told me.
Excellent. You carried the thing out very well. Did you observe where the bullet went?
Yes, sir. I'm afraid it has spoiled your beautiful bust, for it passed right through the head and flattened itself on the wall. I picked it up from the carpet. Here it is.
Holmes asks Watson if he has heard of Colonel Moran, the second most dangerous man in London.
No, I have not.
Well, well, such is fame. But then, if I remember right, you had not heard the name of Professor James Moriarty, who had one of the great brains of the century. Just give me down my index of biographies from the shelf. My collection of M's is a fine one. Moriarty himself is enough to make any better illustrious. And here is Morgan the Poisoner, and Meridew of Abominable Memory, and Matthews, who knocked out my left hand in the waiting room, and Mason the brilliant Sherlockian at Charing Cross, and finally here's our friend of tonight.
As Holmes and Watson talk through the night, Holmes explains how Moran cheated at cards and ran afoul of the young Ronald Adair. Moran ends the squabble by killing Adair with his air gun and soft-nosed bullet, just as he had planned to do away with Holmes. The story concludes with these final words of Holmes.
It will be verified or disproved at the trial. Meanwhile, come what may, Colonel Moran will trouble us no more. The famous air gun of von Herder will embellish the Scotland Yard Museum, and once again Mr. Sherlock Holmes is free to devote his life to examining those interesting little problems which the complex life of London so plentifully presents.
Holmes is back. Fans are thrilled, and Conan Doyle's reputation is restored. Not the outcome he was hoping for, but one that he seemed unable to distance himself from. But Holmes had undergone a change. In his memoirs, Conan Doyle quotes a reader who judged the later stories inferior to the earlier ones, to the effect that when Holmes went over the Reichenbach Falls, he may not have been killed, but he was never quite the same man after.
Thank you. Good job. Hey.
Good night, David. Good night.
That's it.
Okay. Is there any thoughts, questions? Go ahead.
I've got 2 things to say. One is, let me ask a trivial question. Trivia or trivial. Where did Doyle get the idea for the turning of the bust?
Where did what? Where did Doyle get the idea of the turning of the bust?
Well, Mrs. Hudson.
From Bill the Greatest Sherlockian.
The answer was during the hiatus, William Gillette wrote his play. It's not in the script, but Jack Tracy tells us that he had a period of time where he experimented with the turning of the bust.
Huh.
And it was Moriarty living across the street in the empty house, so he got the idea for that too from the play. So that's one. The second was, I think when the story was first published, they spelled the High Lama with 2 L's. causing the poet Ogden Nash to write, the 1L llama, he's a priest. The 2L llama, he's a beast.
You're right, they did spell it wrong. Other thoughts on the story? Yes, sir.
I have a question about the air gun, because when I was reading it, when I think air gun, I think BB gun. Is there any actuality in that, of an air gun that you can put in a standard bullet?
Absolutely, and this group saw it back in about 1990. We were at Centennial Park in a shelter, and I was talking about Bill Baker earlier.
Yeah.
He produced an air rifle that was probably not the same, but it was an air rifle of the same make, the same model, the same everything, and he did not demonstrate it other than showing how you pressurize the chamber and so forth. But yes,
It was definitely an assassination weapon.
yeah.
Who was that did it?
Bill Baker.
Bill Baker.
Don't you remember that gun he brought to the park and scared me to death? I made him put it under the table.
Yeah, we had our
Oh,
annual
it's not
picnic at the
coming
park
back
that
to
year.
So are they still in use, air guns like that? Or like, what's the history of
Well, I think you could still get air guns, but they're more
Yeah.
like BB guns.
Yeah, I mean,
I've been
it's
shot with
still
a
a
BB
pump.
gun
I don't
many
remember.
times, it doesn't break the
Do
skin.
y'all remember? Was it a pump that?
Yeah,
it
you have
was.
to
It
pump
was a
it.
lever on it that pumped it.
Yeah, you have to pump it.
Okay.
It's- You could,
Did
I
you
guess
get that
someone
from the
skillful
museum?
could get maybe
Mhm.
a
Or
shot
it's on
off every
collection.
10 seconds.
Yeah. So so we know it's feasible.
Yeah.
So Doyle did his homework.
I'm just wondering, has anyone been to the Crime Museum in London?
I
To see
assume
if the gun is there?
I'm assuming it's the Black Museum is what they refer to it, and I'm told the only people that can see it are law enforcement officers.
Huh.
Now that's coming from law enforcement officers in Nashville, because I made a comment one time and somebody had been, and I said, well, you know, I'm pretty close to the police department. I said, but you're not law enforcement. I said, if I ever get to go, I'm gonna take your badge, so shut up. But apparently to see it the way it was described to me, you have to carry an official letter from your department and have identification. I mean, now is that true? I don't know. It was told by over the headquarters of Metro Police.
Yeah.
It's probably there.
I'm assuming
How would we
it
know?
is, if we're true Sherlockians.
Not to end the discussion, just to remind you that next October meeting is Dean Richardson. You remember the story?
No, I was hoping you did.
Okay.
It's on the site, but
Yeah, it's on the
honestly, one I
website.
don't
Go to
know.
the website and click
check
on
it, download the
the
story.
schedule.
We'll get that out.
And you can get the story, and it's on the Conan Doyle website.
Right.
Which you got-
But there's a link. There should be a link on our site.
There is, and it goes. We do not have anyone for November, and so we need to.
I don't remember the story. I think I have it on my phone, but we'll
I think
figure
I
it
know
out.
that very quick. Anybody interested in helping us though with the
See if I
November,
got
whatever
the
the story is?
The winning shot is the story.
The
winning shot.
The winning shot, thank you. Yeah, the winning shot is the story for October.
Let's see if I put it on the
It's
calendar.
nice that somebody. Thank you. Oh, you cheated.
Well, that's on open book test.
That's what I'm looking at.
And the wait
It is, that's what I'm saying.
I do not, but we will figure it out. We do need a volunteer, rather than me have to call you and plead and cry and carol on the phone. Who would like to volunteer to do the unnamed
Who
story
that
for
is?
November?
Nicholas Myers.
Annual meetings, here we come. The story for November is, just a moment, The Noble Bachelor
The
of the
Noble
Adventures.
Bachelor.
And
Who would like to do the Noble
There's an
Bachelor?
audio file there, if you listen to this, November the 19th.
Mhm.
Is that gonna be a problem for Thanksgiving?
Yeah, it's very close.
That's kind of a tough one, isn't it?
It'll be our last official meeting of the year. We may have something in December, but it's always irregular. So,
How many think you would not be able to make November the 19th? Have you seen any? Okay.
I think I'm going to Indianapolis.
Okay.
well, we can move it to the 12th, for us.
Well, here, let me look at my map.
But if we're really gonna, let's do it today,
Yeah,
because there was a time when we moved meetings around and confused everybody. Would the 12th be a problem for anybody today that you know of?
No.
All right,
Less
then
holiday
let it be done.
The
What's that?
Yeah, cause the 11th is a Friday, which is better. So it'll be a holiday weekend. It may not matter to anybody here.
Well, it's, place will be open.
Yeah, the place will be open.
I didn't see a lot of hands that said they couldn't be here the 19th, so
Yeah.
maybe That's
Just
our-
over the
I don't see any
19th?
problem with the 19th.
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving is, the week later.
Yeah, yeah, let's
Oh.
just keep it the 19th.
All right.
Any volunteers? Noble Bachelor.
Don't worry, we'll find somebody. If we don't hear from you, you'll get a call. And, you'll get a call and we'll say, somebody, you need to do this. But anyway, we'll figure.
Volunteer Marino. Kevin
Yeah.
has to drive.
Well, now one of the things I thought we should do, and we, maybe what we do, we put him on the spot and we put him on the TV and we make him Zoom to us
I think it'd be
or
great.
FaceTime to us on the 19th.
We
What
can
do
do
you
that,
think?
good, yeah.
Absolutely.
It's worth a try.
All in favor?
Hey.
Is there any
Marino's in.
opposition? Marino is elected to have to do it online on November the 19th or appear in person.
Yeah.
Does he know any of
No,
that?
he don't know anything.
Not yet, not yet.
That's
Well,
what I like to do.
You're gonna call him.
I'm gonna personally call him and let him know how glad we are he's accepted our
It's
sincere.
clear that he doesn't have any regard to us anymore.
Very good.
He
He
never,
what?
he never checks in, comes to
He-
Zoom, calls any of
Maybe
us.
because he's gotten in there and he keeps getting his groups, but let me tell you, there was a picture of his group. He formed a new group, it's called the 1895 Society or something, and I looked at it, and I thought, it was just, they were in a little little square table in the library, a bunch of old people.
Oh,
And,
absolutely.
I mean,
We have young people.
wait a minute, what do you mean laughing at my old people? Just a bunch of old people, they were gray haired and beards and stuff. I thought, I can't believe he left this young, vivacious group to go to live in Florida. So anyway, he's elected. October, the winning shot. November, Marino and the Noble Bachelor.
Yep.
Then it's Christmas, it's the first of the year, and we'll have to,
Start over.
our education supervisor will pull back out our schedule and we'll get it published again.
Okay.
Other points of business? Let's see our time.
Thanks again to
12,
everybody who
28.
participated. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Oh, Gab?
I've got things I'm supposed to.
221B Baker Street
Here's how we close. Good.
by Vincent Starrett, BSI. Here dwell together still two men of note, who never lived and so could never die. How very near they seem, yet how remote. That age before the world went all awry. But still the game's afoot for those with ears, attuned to catch the distant viewful halloo. Only these things through the heart believeth are true. The yellow fog swirls past the window pane as night descends upon the fabled street. A lonely hansom splashes through the rain. The ghostly lamps fail at 20 feet. Here, though the world explode, these two survive, and it will always be. It is always 1895.